registration, it would delay issuance of building permits. The report further states at page 7, pre-servicing could be used as a tool that allows developers to meet construction seasons better than the current system. A scenario could be that pre-servicing happens in the fall, registration of the subdivision happens in the winter, and permits are issued in the following spring. If pre-servicing did not happen in the fall, it would happen in the spring, with permits issued in summer or the fall of the following year. That appears to be the exact situation that Riverview and Mile Hill find themselves in. And also is the position that the purchasers of homes from the builders who have bought from the developers find themselves in, and you know that they have been clamoring for issuance of building permits. At page 5 of your report, staff identifies the risk of pre-servicing to the municipality, although there are 6 bullet points, there appear to be 2 main issues. Firstly, leaving infrastructure for a significant length of time unused. Well, in response, we point out that there will be testing and that the risk is all on the developer and its financial backers. That's really not a concern here. There will be testing during the period, and there will be testing before the hookup is allowed to any municipal services. Secondly, there's the perception of the public that approvals are imminent, and this flows down from that, the 5 concerns, 4 other concerns that are mentioned. And in response, we point out that the Planning Act and therefore the Province of Ontario allow pre-sales once draft plan approval has been obtained. The expectations are really built up not because of what's on the ground in our submission, but because of discussions between developer, builder, and final homeowner. Thirdly, we would point out that in every agreement of purchase and sale for a new home in the Province of Ontario has to contain the Tarion extension agreement that's in there, must be in there, that allows for builders, and yea, it allows for homeowners to extend the time for closing. After a certain point in time, there is remuneration payable to home buyers, but they have to know, and I tell every client who's buying a new home, that you've got to know that this can be extended out automatically for these periods by your vendor, the seller, the builder. So we submit that it's really not a function of seeing that somebody's moved some earth and installed some services that create these expectations. There's some concern that legal action could be brought against the municipality because they allowed pre-servicing, and yet people can't get building permits or can't buy their home. Well, I've never seen such an action, let alone one that's been successful, and I would challenge anybody to point to one where that has come up. There may be some concern that there's additional work for the municipality, that they're duplicating services here, that we do it once in the pre-service, once again in the subdivision agreement. In our submission, that's not the case. There's no duplication. You do it once. The provisions are very similar. There's testing, there's protections, there's indemnifications, and there really isn't a duplication, but rather it's better project management from a timeline perspective for both the municipality and the developer, builder, and ultimately the end user to be proceeding down parallel paths that allow the permits to be issued at an earlier stage. The advantage of pre-servicing, most importantly, especially in this case, in the situation we find ourselves in with the outlet, pre-servicing will allow the homes to be built sooner, thus removing negative impacts of the delay. Secondly, pre-servicing will generate revenue to the municipality at an earlier point. Taxes are payable when an occupancy permit is issued. Sooner it's issued, the more revenue. Thirdly, it will reduce to some extent, the developer's cost by having to be able to put these services in place at an earlier stage, pay for them, and not have to have that duplicate of paying your contractor and having a letter of credit out. So There is an advantage. We won't deny that, but that's certainly not the reason that at least these two developers are before you this evening. It's negligible in the scheme of things. What they want to do is to get the services in so that building permits can be issued as soon as the subdivision agreement is finalized. In conclusion, this is not a unique process. We're not making an unusual request to the municipality. Many municipalities in the province of Ontario allow and have pre-servicing as a matter of course. That's large communities, small communities, developing communities. I think there was a list provided by Mr. Stolp at one time of, Henry, how many?
Six or seven.
6 or 7 communities, including the town of Milton, Tecumseh. I know that Quinte does it. There are numerous provisions. It's in all the standard lawyers' handbooks on municipal agreements. It's pre-servicing agreement. Here it is. This is what they look like. They're boilerplate. The only thing that changes is the engineering and some of the dollar amounts or percentage amounts. So they are commonplace. It's part of the process of development. The agreement, we prepared an agreement, quite frankly. We took it from the municipality of Tecumseh because it seemed to be in at least the middle ground, if not more beneficial to the municipality, and quite frankly, we didn't want to waste time. We submitted one from the town of Milton. It's 3 pages long. We just submitted that, but we took and made a template of the one from Tecumseh that we thought covered the basis. I looked at the one from the municipality of Quinte West, I think it is, and it is very similar provisions. I'm doing a development down there with a client, and they went through pre-servicing, and it assisted greatly in the registration of the plan and the availability of building permits. So we did take that and we prepared it just so that you wouldn't have to wait for one to come back to you. The recommendation includes, of course, having the engineering finally approved and also the agreement approved by your legal team. But we just took it that one step because of the timing. We're here in August. You're going to meet next in September 12th or later, as council. So we didn't want to have any delays if possible. So that we would submit to you that you're better off with the pre-servicing agreement and a pre-servicing agreement in your standard process. If you want to use, you can at any time change a policy if it doesn't appear to be working, but based on the experience of other municipalities, we suggest to you it will work and be beneficial to all three parties, that is the municipality, the developer, and the end user. Staff was of the opinion that the pre-servicing process has merit, and we concur in that view of the pre-servicing process, and we would ask you to this evening adopt your staff recommendation, which is set out here in this presentation and also in your staff report in two different places, one at the page 4 or 5 and one at the conclusion, and that's the one I read out to you. So we're here to answer any questions you may have about what has been requested and our comments on your staff report and recommendation. Pardon me.
Thank you for your presentation. Questions by members of council. Councillor Powell.
The developer was before county back a ways, and we gave them an extension, 1.5 years. They said, okay, it'll be done in August. I was on Power Line Road today, and I don't see any evidence of the project even having started.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first part.
The stormwater management, the council gave a 1.5 year extension to get that finished, and they said it would be in August, and here we are almost the end of August.
Well,
And I
right.
don't see any evidence of anything being done on Power Line Road.
I understand that there was a storm water management facility in there that was breached, as we all know, in the storm event, and that it will be rebuilt. So I'm not sure where the year and a half comes from. Maybe in terms of the outlet, that work hasn't started on the outlet through the Gurney property. That is correct. It has not started there. It is awaiting a further final, hopefully, engineering review, which is regretful, but it's a complicated issue. Also, I mean, it speaks to more why we're asking for this pre-servicing, so we can be ready, meet the expectations of the end user here, because the way it reads now, you can't service until that's built. As you point out, it hasn't been started, the engineering hasn't been approved. There are mechanisms in here that you know, we just can't go ahead and start moving earth, as pointed out, many projects have done, because you don't have that kind of a bylaw in place. And so we're suggesting we do it through this agreement while you come up with the necessary bylaw. Henry, did you have something to?
With respect to the Gurney outfall, EIS have been submitted to GRCA, and there was some discussion between the county staff, Ainley's and ourselves, and Cahoon's. So there's a solution with respect to the design. And so the EIS was submitted, I'm going to say 2 or 3 weeks ago. And GRCA is going through it, and I expect it'll take another 2 or 3 weeks before that gets finalized. In the meantime, there is some archaeological work which is also ongoing. It won't necessarily change the design at all, but it's a piece of the process which has to be done. So it's a final phase of that is also ongoing right now, Murray. So we didn't anticipate the archaeological side of it, and if we had, we would be in approval process now. So that's where we are. So it's certainly coming much closer, and there seems to be tentative agreement between all the different parties in terms of what the design should look like.
Councillor Palmer?
Yeah, if I may, through you of the presenter, just a couple of questions. Number one, you have to concede, Jay, that this will take some form of extra staff time, because they're going to have to do the process twice regardless, one for the pre-servicing agreement and one for the final agreement. So it has to, and so I guess my first point on that is, how do we envision the county being reimbursed for the extra staff time that this will take? Because it will. Number two, is there enough money set aside to return the site to its original state if it never goes through, if there's so many changes brought about by the final approval process, say by the Department of Fisheries and Oceans or whatever, that the project goes through in a significantly altered state. And so if it doesn't happen the way that you're assuming it will happen, and it gets abandoned, how is it reconstructed to, what monies are used or what monies are set aside to reconstruct it to an undeveloped site, whether trees are put on or something else, so that that stuff gets pulled back out of the ground? Because I don't think 10% that's mentioned in here would cover that. And so I would like to see better protections for the site itself to be returned to its undeveloped state if the project never moves forward. And I don't think that the amount in there would be enough. And I think I read in there that would just be left in there for someone else to deal with later, you know, and sold or whatever. But I'm not really comfortable with that. So that if this stuff is put into the ground and it never goes forward, I don't want it sitting there abandoned in perpetuity. I want to see it restored, and so that there's enough protections in place for that. The plus side, I see that for the consumer who's buying a house, that's very good, and also for the developer because it streamlines things. I don't know if I see the real tax advantage for the county of having those houses producing taxes that much sooner, because I don't see subdivisions as a real tax moneymaker for the municipality anyway. So I guess my two questions revolve around, how do you plan on restoring the site if the approvals never happen? And number two, how will the county be reimbursed for the extra staff costs that will happen regardless on going through this approval process twice? Thank you.
The municipality, the duplication of effort here, they only have to review they have to be final engineering drawings that are approved. And so your engineering staff and your peer review staff will have to look at them once for the purpose of the subdivision agreement, and for the purposes of this, they'll be the same.
Yeah, but we're already dealing with, I think, submission 5 right now for the
Well,
engineering.
those are, yes.
And I guess my question is, what's typical for engineering submissions?
We-
Because it seems like that sucks up a lot of our staff resources to go through incomplete engineering stuff too, and that needs to go back and go back and go back. And I'd like to see that streamlined then too, so that, we get this finalized with engineering submission 2 or 3, not 5 or 7 or 8, because we don't have the staff for that, and if we're going to do that, then I want to see us get reimbursed by the developers for the extra staff to do that. And so I'd like to see that in here too, because we are getting that extra staff time sucked up by these submissions. And if we're doing pre-servicing, we're really adding another level of staff overview on this. And so that's more engineering, that's more review by our staff than we do right now.
Well, with respect, I don't see that when it's going to be done through the plan of subdivision process in any event. So there's 5 submissions. I say to you that there will not, you won't have a pre-servicing agreement until there's final approval. So, and during that process, the developer is responsible for the costs. And they get billed for staff time and peer review time during that process, to my knowledge.
And we do.
It's billed. I mean, it's regretful for all of us that there are 5 or even 13 submissions. And we too would like to see that streamlined, because it's costly over here. But it's my understanding, stand to be corrected by your staff, but that we're going to go through that engineering process once, and that there's going to be payment for it, and certainly a peer review of it, which is largely where they go. And so to answer and there's going to be a fee for this agreement. There's a recommendation for a fee for pre-servicing agreement. And as to the last question, how it will be restored, there are provisions in here that it will be restored, and that the municipality has the power to complete, tear up, or cover over as they deem appropriate. Your 10% comment, that came from staff, wasn't a suggestion of ours, and if it's looking at it and you're going to take advice on this, in any event, as to what's normal, it may well be increased to be able to accommodate that. It is on, these are works that are 99% on the developer's land. Yes.
Councillor Pierce?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the presenter. You use the statement, meet expectations of the end user. You use that a couple times through what you were talking about tonight. And I'm just curious as to, when you say meet the expectations of the end user, are they expecting pre-servicing to be done? Has that little tidbit been dangled in front of them? I'm curious as to, what is the expectation of the end user? Why would you say that several times?
We haven't dangled that in front of them at all as a result of recent delays in the matters that you're aware of. We've not told them anything or suggested that there will be pre-servicing.
Okay.
I was commenting on the expectations, which was a term used in the staff report, that get created and they're created in many ways. There was a suggestion that end user expectations come from seeing work on the site, from seeing roads in, from seeing street lights go up. So they think they're going to be in there sooner rather than later. And so it does assist, and there are fewer delays, and it's a more streamlined procedure. And what I'm saying is you're going to meet the end user expectations by going down a parallel path rather than going lockstep, over this hurdle, then this hurdle, then this hurdle. So, and we're not just speaking about these two developments. I mean, I'm here, and I represent those two developers. We think it's a good process for this municipality, and many other municipalities would concur in that submission. And many other developers would as well.
Okay, so if I'm looking at this and you're talking about, going in parallel, so they see that there's work being done and infrastructure being put in and roads and light posts and stuff like that, that to me is getting the expectation of the end user, hey, we're really close here. What if you hit a hiccup? And then it's delayed. So to me, that's kind of a catch-22 there. You're putting yourself in a situation where the expectation of the end user, as we're calling it here, is, hey, we're almost there, when in essence, you might not be.
That's correct. But that, as I say to you, is a situation there could be numerous reasons why a project gets delayed, and it's in every agreement of purchase and sale for a new home in the province of Ontario that they'll give you a target date, but the developer builder can extend that out. I think it's probably gets close to a year.
Yeah.
And it may even go beyond that. And also, what the reason that was brought in, actually, a bit of background, was because in Toronto, they used to let them run out. And so that the home, when the prices were rising quickly, the builders said, sorry, we couldn't meet your closing deadline, bye-bye. Or you can pay us another $50,000 because that's what the market bears. That's what the Terrian warranty, it's a swinging gate. So the developer can take it out so far, and then the end user can also take it out and say, no. So regretfully, in the building business, it's not all cookie cutter and exactly a precise, predictable time as to when you're going to be able to move into your home, and that's part of buying a new home.
Thank you.
Councillor Carney? Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to the presenter, Mr. Hitchon, we know the situation with the Edgar property, which I believe has brought about the reasoning for all this coming about today, about how everything has basically fallen apart on that whole process. And we've seen it firsthand. The issue I see here is we see in the paper now that the people who own the homes or who owned the so-called homes that aren't in place yet are upset because they missed the date 3, 4, 5, 6 times now on certain properties that are attached to the Stalt property. There also is a protocol that was supposed to have been followed that obviously wasn't followed properly to begin with, because if it had been followed properly, we probably wouldn't be sitting here today talking about this. It would have been done properly. Henry would have been able to go and build his houses, and the Gurneys would have had theirs done. But because of the lack of experience in someone trying to build a home or build homes has caused a big mix-up in this whole fiasco that's happened in the county right now. My question is, if the process had been followed properly the first time, would we be sitting here talking about this today?
The process was followed, but the engineering submissions took a lot longer than were anticipated, and quite frankly, there was reliance by both developers on the engineers to get them through the process.
Councillor Simons?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the presenter. Just for clarification, Jay, no lots will be created and no building permits will be issued until the drain is completed and satisfied by the County of Brant. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Any other member of council? None? Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Your requests will be considered by council.
Thank you. Thank you, councillors.
We'll move on then to the next delegation, and that is Heather Carroll with a request to permit backyard chickens. Welcome. Please proceed when you're ready. And your
presentation is submitted with the addendum.
It'll all be up there on the screen, so you can just watch that too if you'd like. Good evening. I'm here once again to request that the council change the bylaw to allow backyard chickens in Brant County. I understand that at the last planning advisory meeting, there were a number of my neighbors who spoke out against this proposal, and also a number of supporters to request, as I do, that it be passed. I know there were many other supporters who wanted to attend the meeting, but like myself were unable to do so due to work or life schedules. I would like to point out several things that struck me when I learned about the proceedings of the last planning advisory meeting. First of all, if you recall, the poll I took around my neighborhood, which I presented at the last meeting, was meant to give a general idea of the amount of support in an average Brant County neighborhood, which I think it accomplished very well. My poll showed that the number of people who were willing to sign their name to a document stating their support for backyard chickens was 82.7%. That is a significant percentage, far greater than most elected officials could ever hope for in winning an election. Granted, our larger elections have more than 2 options, but it's still a very significant percentage. The few individuals who are against the idea may be louder and perhaps angrier than those of us who are pushing for change, but that does not make them right. I noticed that all the points that were brought up in their arguments against backyard chickens were points that I have brought up myself several times, along with well-researched and logical proof explaining why they were untrue or not an issue with backyard chickens. I will briefly review these points in a minute, because I firmly believe that facts should always take precedence over emotion. Democracy should not be based on who is loudest or most upset, but on which side has the most support. Brant County is a mostly rural county, and its residents are largely in support of backyard chickens. I am asking you to set aside your own personal feelings on the subject and to be unbiased as you look at the facts that I have thoroughly researched and presented to you. Then I hope that you will vote in a way that represents the residents of our county. I have, over the past few months, spent hours conducting research and have given reasonable proof and logical evidence to show that backyard chicken keeping would be good in our county. And I have suggested appropriate measures to assist in making the bylaw change appeal to everyone as much as possible. I have countered every single point of opposition that has been brought against this idea. To counter the myth of chickens spreading disease, I have showed evidence from the Center for Disease Control that chickens harbor a fraction of the number of diseases that we find in cats or dogs, animals which we allow in our homes. From the University of Minnesota Food Policy Research Center, avian influenza or bird flu is currently not considered by animal health or public health experts to be a significant risk in backyard poultry. I have quoted reports from the U.S. Department of Agriculture that state that there is no evidence to point to a specific pathway for the spread of avian flu. The idea that backyard chickens spread disease is complete speculation. This is a claim that has no scientific proof or evidence to support it, and therefore has no right to be considered. The only thing we do know is that avian flu spreads within commercial chicken farms very easily. We also know that backyard chickens are very rarely affected by the disease. Really, based on disease spread alone, it would make more sense to ban commercial chicken farms than it would to ban backyard chickens. However, we all know that that would never happen. It would be considered illogical and impractical for most people. It is also illogical to ban backyard chickens based on a claim that is pure speculation, with no evidence to back it up. Now I would like to once again briefly counter the claims made in the last planning advisory meeting, that chickens would disrupt a neighborhood in various ways. I have explained that chickens are much quieter than the dogs barking down the street. Chickens are less bothersome than the cats who poop in my kids' sandbox regularly. And chickens do not increase pests or predators. In fact, chickens eat many insects and pests, including ticks, which reduces the risk of Lyme disease in the area. They help contribute to the health of our yards and gardens. Finally, chickens will not increase predator populations in neighborhoods. I'll tell you what will attract predators in my backyard. All of these animals I can find in my backyard at any given time. They are an easy meal for predators and are what coyotes generally eat. The proposed bylaw states that the chickens will be enclosed at all times, so they will not be an easy target for predators and will not attract them to an area, nor cause them to hang around. As an example, I will tell you a little story about pigeons. Pigeons, for your information, are very similar to chickens in terms of noise, smell, housing and care requirements, and the supposed attraction of predators to the area. This is a picture of my backyard before I bought my house. My husband and I purchased our home last year, and the previous owners of our house had lived there for 5 years. During those 5 years, they kept nearly 200 pigeons in their backyard, housed in 3 large coops, which you see here. This was illegal, but they received no complaints by neighbors, so he was able to get away with it, and they have since moved out of the county. And they took these coops with them when they moved. These neighbors of mine who attended the last planning advisory meeting to complain about backyard chickens, and who are so concerned about the 6 chickens that I would like to legally keep in my yard, probably never even knew that these 200 pigeons were there all those years. Due to the nature of my yard, as you can see, they were completely hidden from sight. But there was no noise, no smell, there were no pests attracted to the area, and no disturbance to bother anyone in my neighborhood. And I would like to add, during the 5 years that those 200 birds were in my backyard, there were no children or dogs snatched by coyotes. That was with 200 birds. I am only asking for 6 chickens. This is an issue that's not going to disappear. There are many individuals who go ahead and keep chickens illegally in Brant County right now, regardless of the bylaw, and they are able to do so with no difficulties. Brant County is currently being threatened with legal action from one man who is determined to keep his chickens. The people of Brant County want to have backyard chickens. This issue was brought up a couple of years ago by Laura Fox and Lindsay Savory, and it has been brought forward again now by myself. And if it gets turned down, I will assure you that this is an issue that someone else will bring forward, and you will be facing it again and again until the change takes place. Allowing backyard chickens is becoming the new norm for communities around North America. I have shown you previously how many communities in America and Canada who allow backyard chickens already. It has been successfully implemented in many cities and communities across the continent. I am asking that the Council vote to pass this proposed bylaw amendment. There have been many options presented with the proposed bylaw to assist with making the transition easier. Rather than turning this bylaw down, I ask that you look at it thoroughly and find ways to solve any concerns that are found. If disease is a concern, require that all chickens be vaccinated. If location is a concern, implement a lot size requirement of a ½ an acre or larger. This will effectively keep chickens out of the more densely populated areas, such as Paris. If you are unsure about the impact on the county, implement the bylaw temporarily for 1 or 2 years before putting it in place permanently. Grand Rapids, Michigan recently did a backyard chicken trial very successfully. If you are concerned that chicken owners need a certain level of knowledge in order to keep chickens responsibly, require that they be an active member of the 4-H Club or the Brant Poultry Association. Your staff have done the research and much of the work already and have recommended approving this proposed bylaw amendment. Let's work together to accomplish this goal and move Brant County forward. Please vote to allow backyard chickens. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Your request is clear. Members of council, inquiries. Councillor Pierce, questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Thank you for your presentation. A question on the 82.7% of your poll there.
Yes.
Can you tell me, is that people or is that households?
People.
Roughly how many people did you go to?
I have it here actually, and I've submitted a copy of it to your clerk here. There were a total of 52 people who signed and 9 people who refused.
Okay, so the 52 people that signed, do you suggest that they all signed it because they're in support of it? Or do you suggest they signed it to move on and with their evening?
What I did was when I knocked on their door, I introduced myself and told them where I lived, just down the street, because this was in my own neighborhood. And I explained to them the bylaw proposal, that it would allow backyard chickens in the residential areas similar to where we lived. And I showed them my petition here, which has written on top that we, the undersigned, show our support for keeping chickens in the backyards of residential areas in Brant County is essentially what it says. And so then I asked if they would be willing to sign this or not in support.
right?
of it, and they either signed it or they said no.
And if they said no, then you just walked away?
Then I said, thank you very much, and I walked away, yeah.
Interesting. Because we kind of heard conflicting stories to that.
I heard that, yes.
Now, second part, you mentioned something that, you would be interested if the county did this on a trial basis. So let's just say hypothetically, we decided, okay, you know what, we're going to try this for a year, okay? At the end of the year, we decided, no, it's not going to go. Is that going to be enough for you?
No,
So then I'm trying to understand why you would even suggest to do it on a trial basis. You don't have to answer that, thank you.
I would like to answer it if I may. Every community I have heard of that implemented a bylaw like this on a trial basis has been perfectly satisfied with how it went and has continued on to make it permanent.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, now that you answered that, I would like to comment.
Proceed.
I just suggested that at the end of the year, that we as a council decided not to go forward. We're not every other community. We decide not to go forward. Is that okay with you? And you stated no. That's all I need to know. Thank you.
Councillor Carty.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to the presenter, you had mentioned earlier that there may not have been any identifiable ways of checking to see if people are getting possible diseases or salmonella from chicken raised in backyard operations. You also mentioned earlier about the potential of that is very rare. Are you aware who the CDC is?
I am aware.
Okay. Do you know that in the month of July, 10 states alone had 611 cases of reported backyard infections from salmonella from live
Salmonella.
birds?
I was talking specifically in that quote of the, I was talking specifically of avian flu there. I am aware of those warnings of salmonella.
No, these aren't warnings. These are
Sorry.
actual cases.
Yes, the actual cases of salmonella. I did see that, yes.
Thank you.
I would also like to point out that they have not put out any warning against keeping backyard chickens. I know also on the CDC website, they actually advise people against keeping pets such as turtles due to the extreme risk of disease spread. And they have not done so with chickens.
Councillor Carty.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I appreciate what you're saying there. And I didn't want to bring this up, but you do realize that the CDC is now saying 45 states have had the same issue. Thank you.
Councillor Bauman, please.
Those were my questions, actually, so they've been answered. Thank you.
Thank you.
May
Any
I-
other member of council?
May I ask one question to Councillor Carty in return?
Question
I would simply
of
like to,
council?
well, of Mr. Carty.
Proceed.
I would just like to ask if you have also researched how many salmonella cases have come from the food that we get in the grocery store, the eggs that come from commercial farms.
We're worried about birds in our backyards. Thank you.
Any other member of council? If not, thank you for your presentation. It will be considered by council. That completes the list of delegations, the first A being a public hearing, and the matter is on the agenda to be discussed by council. Second, request from Fred Strickland regarding the berm. How would you like to deal with that matter? Councillor Simons?
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I'd like to move that we request the planning department to do a report of options that are allowed or that could be allowed for this kind of situation, and come back with a report to us.
Your request is, you're going to move a motion requesting the planning department to
do a report on options that could be available.
In other words, we'll refer this to new business. We don't normally decide now.
Refer it to.
It's
planning?
usually referred.
Okay, I just would like to see it referred to planning, that's all, for a report.
You wish to present the motion? Is that
Yes.
in order?
Yeah, I'd
Thank
like to
you.
present the motion that we.
Is there a seconder for Councillor Simons?
I'll second it, and I'd like to speak to it if I could.
A second by Councillor Pierce. Councillor Pierce, comment.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and my apologies, I should have asked earlier if the applicant knew, is there, there's another phase in behind that, so is this berm just temporary until such time there's houses behind it? Do we know that? So maybe that might come out in,
We need to ask the planner.
The response is no.
okay?
Yeah.
However, it should be referred. Councillor Gatward, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So you're suggesting under other business number 14 that Councillor Simons make her motion? Or
She
we-
has made the motion, it's been seconded. We will clarify it if you wish it read by the clerk.
Thank you.
Do you wish it clarified?
Yes.
Madam Clerk?
The motion is to refer this for a staff report, the matter of the
Planning.
firm, planning staff report, yeah.
With
Speaking to the motion,
For other options.
any member of council? Councillor Simons?
Would it be appropriate to add for other options, for other possible options with the motion?
You're adding to the motion?
I said it originally,
Yes.
and,
You wish the motion changed?
well, I want it to be complete, and I don't think it was complete the way Heather
Madam
read it,
Clerk,
so.
do you have a question of the presenter?
No, the motion will be that the matter of the berm at 29 Crawford Place be referred to planning staff for a report on options, on possible options.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, speak to that. I'm not particularly zeroing this in at 29 Crawford.
No,
I'm
that's
saying
the
it's-
matter before us.
I'm saying it's the whole situation, if they
No, the
could.
matter before us is the delegation presented a request.
Okay, fine.
That is before us.
Okay.
That's to be dealt with in some manner.
Okay.
Councillor Bauma?
I'm not sure if asking our staff for a report on something that was clearly on the drawings of the subdivision before will be helpful, because they're going to say, yes, that berm was put there because of a drainage agreement. And I don't know what our recourse is for a builder or developer who gives a buyer incomplete information, if that was indeed the case, which I don't know. So I don't see the purpose of asking for a report from planning on that, because in the drawings that we saw, that berm was drawn in. You just didn't see it in three-dimensional scale. So I don't know how that would help the situation to have another report on that, because we know what the report's going to say. And as far as options go, you know, that's all done, and that subdivision's in place and the berm is in place as per engineering requirements. So I don't know what that will do for us. If someone could enlighten me on the purpose of that then for us.
Councillor Bauma speaks against the motion. Councillor Cardy, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I guess the question I have is, because I couldn't really see it on the drawings that were presented to us, except for the drawing the gentleman brought. In the drawing, it shows the layout where the berm is. I don't see the height of the berm, and if it's in on the drawings, I would assume, I guess, that planning has gone through this to give it its okay so that they could go ahead and build a house and allow the property to be used. The only concern I have is there liability with water runoff? That's the only concern I have.
Thank you. Councillor Simons? You had your hand up.
Mr.
You
Mayor-
pass? Do you pass?
Mr. Mayor, if it's appropriate, could we ask staff to, what their feelings are on a report? Since we've had,
Pardon? Feelings?
yes, what their
I
thoughts
don't,
are.
I would not.
What their thoughts are.
No, I do not agree with that
Okay, thank you.
request. If you,
Okay, thank you.
perhaps the Chair of Planning Advisory will be speaking. Councillor Pierce, I believe. Did you have your hand up? Oh, no, sorry, Councillor Powell. Sorry about that.
My one concern is it puts the county in a bad light when we have a major development. This is the second time we've had problems with grading and drainage. And, you know, it's gonna, some developers might want to think twice about coming into the county. And I've heard that the land behind, which is south, it's already been flipped over to another developer, home builder, which I don't know where that would leave us if something comes up about the present developer and builder.
The question is the berm permitted, was it approved by this council? Is it in the terms of an agreement? And if that is asked, that could be answered perhaps. Councillor Chambers, did you have your hand?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I tend to agree with Councillor Bauma with respect to a staff report outlining options. The fact of the matter would be that the subdivision,
Yes.
both phases, would have had a grading plan approved, not only by engineering staff, but indeed the council with regard to the approval process that all subdivisions go through. So whatever's happening, if it is in conformity with what has been approved, then that's the way it will be. If the council wishes to make changes at this time to the grading plan, I would suggest that it may be a little bit of a complication because the phase behind this development is currently being constructed according to an approved grading plan. So unless it can be shown that the berm is inconsistent with an approved grading plan, then there's not a lot we can do at this time with regard to the berm. It never hurts to have a discussion on what can alleviate concerns during constructions, and I don't mind doing that. If there's a mechanism by which the staff can discuss the issue that has been brought forward with the developer, there may be some fine-tuning or revisions that may indeed be possible. So I don't have any great deal of difficulty with getting advice from the planners, and I think the matter could be referred to the planning committee for further discussion and perhaps further action.
Thank you. Councillor Gatward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The delegation pointed out about safety and made several points about slipperiness when it's wet, someone cutting off their toes with a lawnmower, and the steepness of the grade. I think that when we approve these plans of subdivisions, we don't have all the nitty-gritty details. It might be there on some plan that we can't read, but we do depend upon our staff to review those plans. Now, if there's a safety issue, I agree totally with Councillor Chambers that to have our staff review this and come back with a report would be totally in order, because safety should be paramount. And if there is some minor adjustments to the grading that can be done to make this safe and to still continue on with the work
Councillor
behind,
Gatward,
then I would be all in support, Mr.
you're
Mayor.
pre-proposing what is going to come from a staff report. We
Yes, and
shouldn't
I don't
not do
know,
that.
but I think we need to look at the options. Thank you.
But we're not going to be looking at that point. You want a report from the planning department regarding the matter. Is that the intent of the motion?
Yes.
Councillor Wheat, please, planning.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My comment is,
Is it approved?
when we approve a subdivision, plan of subdivision, there's going to be grading work done and approvals in place and peer-reviewed before it's granted. That's standard procedure in the county of Brant. We had some drainage issues up there 6, 7, 8 years ago, and we instructed the staff to make sure when we do our grading that it's done properly, that it's peer-reviewed. When I looked at the pictures from the presenter back a half an hour or so ago, it appeared that berm went the length of that street. Now, how in the world are we going to make an exception at one address? And then if we do, and there's a drainage problem and water's coming down through there, my goodness. Now, as far as safety and cutting your grass, when the purchaser of that lawnmower read the operational manual,
He might have found out some safety procedures before he ran that lawnmower, and one of them might have included safety shoes. The only incidents I've ever had with toes getting cut off was an angry husband when his wife challenged him and didn't take her foot back. She's now called Miss No Toes.
We have a motion before us, and so that all members are completely clear on what it says, please, I'll have the clerk read it for you.
The motion is that the matter of the berm at 29 Crawford Place be referred to the planning department for a staff report on options.
Is that your motion? Seconded. Any further detail or comments or amendments? If not, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. That deals with number B. C, servicing agreements, pre-servicing agreements as requested. How do you wish to deal with this matter? It is listed on the agenda as item 9A under the planning report, is it? Or is it 9A, a separate matter to be discussed? Are we agreed that it be discussed at that point? All in favor? And finally, the request to permit backyard chickens. It's recommendation number 2 in the Planning Advisory Committee report. Are we agreed it be discussed at that point? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. That completes details at this time regarding the delegation request. We'll move on to 5A, adoption of minutes from previous meetings, and there's only one. Brant County Council of July 26, 2016. Usually there's a list of several. Does someone have that motion?
Yes. It's moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Brian Coleman, that the Brant County Council minutes of July 26th be approved.
Comments? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Number 7, consent items. Consent items to be approved, and there is one. Request for noise exemption at 160 Consolidated Drive, Paris. Canadian Cancer Society War Horse Warrior Challenge. Councillor Pierce.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Carty, that the following consent item be approved. That the exemption from Schedule 5A of Schedule B of the County of Brant Noise Bylaw number 185-00 be granted to the Canadian Cancer Society War Horse Warrior Challenge, which will be taking place on September 17, 2016, on Tiger Cat property located at 160 Consolidated Drive, Paris.
Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. B, consent items to be received, and 1, 2, 6. Please note that item 6 has been added and has been circulated with the addendum. C, consent items to be received, communications folder, 1, 2, 6, and 7 and 8 are on page 3. Does any member of council wish an item to be separated and discussed? Councillor Wheat, please.
Yeah, a comment on 7C 4.
4C4, thank you.
An application was to be heard on August 18th. Well, August 18th was 4 days ago.
We will,
I don't know what we can do to correct that.
any other member of council have any item to be removed from the list for discussion separately? If not, we'll deal with that one. Councillor Wheat, I didn't hear your comment.
You didn't hear the comment?
the comment you had on that item?
You did not hear it?
Well, I hear you wanted to extract it from the list.
I'm just making a
Oh.
comment on it, that those applications were going to be heard on August 18th, that was 4 days ago.
The clerk will respond, apparently,
No, I'm not asking for.
It's okay.
but she wishes to.
Those are circulated to all council members when I get them. This is just a formality to have them on the council record.
Well, it's a record that we've received it, the notice. It's more than, yeah, it's formal notice, I see. Thank you. Any other member of council have an item to be extracted? If not, Councillor Pierce has.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Powell. The consent items 7B and 7C be received, and noting that there are 13 total.
Anyone? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. We have now proceeded to page 3, item 8, committee reports. The first being Planning Advisory Committee report. Councillor Powell.
Myself, second by Councilor Carter, at the Planning Advisory Committee report of August 2, 2016 be approved. There will be 6 items altogether.
Questions of the Vice Chair? Any member of council? None? Councillor Gatward.
Mr. Mayor, I would ask that number 2 be separated, voted on separating items for the request for chickens.
Item number 2, removed from the report. We were therefore dealing with the other recommendations, namely 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Any member wish to speak to any of those issues? If not, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item number 2, Councillor Gatward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On larger properties in the county of Brant, I support backyard chickens.
Councillor, we're not differentiating the size of properties.
No, but that was
That's
mentioned.
not in the matter.
That was mentioned by the delegation. And
Yes, but we
I
are
also
not-
could support a temporary bylaw change for a year as a trial for backyard chickens. And I think that we're a rural county. There's a lot of people that want more than just chickens in their backyards. So that's my position. Thank you.
You're stating there are many other types of, was the word animals or fowl
Both animals and fowl.
in backyard? And how does this work, that you're allowed to do that?
I'm not saying that you're allowed to do that. I'm just saying there's a lot of residents that want to keep more than just chickens.
And do keep?
I suspect so.
Well, the point I was going to make, they are kept on occasion on some properties unless there's a complaint, and then it's invested. That's the point by our bylaw enforcement officers. Who else wishes to speak to this item? So, motion presented by Councillor Gatward. Is there a seconder for the motion? Was it a motion? Is it a motion?
No.
You not have recorded. Are you moving, Councillor Gatward?
No, it's a recommendation. I asked for it to be separated and voted on separately.
Recommendation as it stands, yes. Is there a seconder for Councillor Gatward's motion? You are supporting the recommendation in the report, is that correct? But you wanted it separated to support it
To be voted on separately.
separately. Thank you.
So in other words,
Matter's open for members of council. You've heard the motion.
if you want backyard chickens, vote
Does any member of
against
council
number
wish to
2.
speak to the matter? Councillor Chambers.
Mr. Mayor, it's important to realize what the resolution is saying, and it's
Yes,
saying that the County of Brant not proceed with an application for an amendment. It's not saying that the county is either for or against. It is saying that it is not prepared to proceed with an application.
Yes, sir.
The reason that you're not, or you shouldn't, speak in favor of or in opposition of chickens in backyards is that you are presupposing your position if indeed an application is made in which you are supposed to be unbiased and hear both sides of the argument. All along, we've been treating this, or some people have been treating this as an application on its own, whether we're for or
Yes.
against, and I said at the planning committee meeting that that is incorrect. That is why the resolution is very carefully worded. We're not at this time proceeding with an application for an amendment. If we support this, that does not preclude anyone in the county from making an application to do exactly the same thing on their individual properties. So I caution the councilors in their discussion to be careful not to prejudge your position if indeed an application is made, because you're obliged to hear both sides of the story before you indeed make a decision. You'll recall what the solicitor said a few months ago with regard to that topic. So the recommendation that's before us is that, again, to repeat, not proceed with an application for the county at large. And I support that, but that does not preclude anyone on any individual property for making an application for a variance to allow that.
Thank you. Any other speakers? If not, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. We'll move on to Community Services Committee report. Councillor.
Yeah, since Councilor Chambers was away, that the Community Services Committee report at its meeting of August 8th, moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Wheat, be approved, noting there are 4 items.
Questions of the presenter by members of council? Anyone? Oh, there must. None. Councillor Simons.
I have one question, Mr. Mayor, if I may. This is very light. Number 4, the very bottom, that the hardball diamond be converted to a softball field and that the required change will be completed after the rental season ends in 2016. So does that mean it will be done pretty soon, or will that be done next spring? Does it have to go into budget, in other words?
I've been informed next spring.
Okay, thank you. Good, that's okay. That's all I wanted.
Any other member of council? If not, the report. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Corporate Development Committee report.
Thank you, Your Worship. It is moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Bauma that the Corporate Development Committee report of August 8th be approved, seeing there's 10 items.
10 recommendations. Any requests of the chair? Any member of council? If not, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Public Works Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, second by Councilor Carey, that the Public Works Committee report from August 9, 2016 be approved, noting there's 5 recommendations, Mr. Mayor.
Questions of the chair? There is an additional item which will be dealt with separately, an addendum, in the addendum. Any requests? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. John Noble Home Committee of Management.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Carty, that the John Noble Home Committee of Management report of August 10, 2016 be approved.
Questions of the presenter of the recommendations, John Noble. Councillor Baumann.
It was unfortunate that I couldn't be there, but I was just curious, do we have a number on what the home was spending on IT before? And so now that they're bringing in, or asking to bring in a full-time person for computer work, what will the increase be in that?
That's something, if I may, that's going to have to be answered by the staff.
Okay.
Because I don't have the answer to that.
No.
So
Okay.
staff would have to do that. And that would be a good question to bring up at the next meeting.
However, the question is posed here.
I don't have the answer for that, Mr. Mayor, so.
How do you wish to deal with your request, Councillor Baumann? It's acknowledged.
It's acknowledged, and I will take that to our next Committee of Management meeting.
Is that acceptable? Thank you.
Any other member? Questioning the report? Denying the report? If not, all in favor? Opposed? Carried.
The Bucket Center, Paris Old Town Hall Advisory Committee.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Carty, that the Bucket Center / Paris Old Town Hall Advisory Committee report of August 12, 2016 be approved.
Councillor Reed, please.
Yes, there's 2 questions or 2 recommendations there. I do not support number 2, and I refer you to the minutes on pages 136 and 137. I see 3 different requests where Michael Bradley is asked to do their work. Now, we've got a committee to do the work. Why is Michael Bradley doing the work? As I recall, in the last year, we've had 2 management people leave the employ of the County of Brant. Those 2 positions, senior management positions, were combined into one under Michael Bradley. And I personally feel that Michael Bradley has enough to do without doing the work of the committee of the Bucket Center. Because there's a recommendation at the top of 136, there's another one right under it, and there's another one on 137 where M. Bradley is to do the work of that committee. Now that, well, it's common knowledge that I was against the purchase to begin with, but we were told that the committee was going to be formed, we formed the committee and they were going to do the work, and now we've got staff doing it. And I don't like it. So I'm not going to support number 2, because I think they've got a committee, and that committee needs to get the rag out of their rear end and get working and doing the work themselves.
It's a little bit harsh. Mr. Mayor, may I ask General Manager Bradley to come to and give his feelings on that, because I don't have an answer for it at the moment.
Not
It was
looking for an
2
answer.
letters that were supposed to be composed, and we've asked Mr. Bradley to compose them, if you recall, and bring them back for signatures of the mayor and the chair at our next meeting. That was the one request, and I don't know how other that would be handled to make it a legal letter. So maybe Mr. Bradley has nothing more to
No,
add, but I know that staff have been involved in many other projects within the county of Brant, and I don't know how come this one is being, I would say, being very crass, centered out, because the staff are the leads on some of this material to advise us as to which way to go. So I'm kind of stamping at what Councillor Weed has said, and I would like to know why he is saying this, because that's what our staff are for, to give us direction at committee level.
The request is more aptly dealt with and responded by the committee itself. In the meantime, Councillor Baumann, please.
I think it's because we were led to believe as council that if we purchase this building, the taxpayer would not be beholden to make major investments in it.
Correct.
And so the very fact that we're not being reimbursed by fundraising for our staff's time, and I seem to recall you saying that, Councillor Simons, that the people would just be lining up to give money to this project. So that isn't happening, and now we're counting on our staff to do that work when and as Councillor Wheat mentioned, that staff member has lots of other things to do. And so I think we should find a different means and have someone else on the committee doing that sort of work and preparing those RFQs instead of someone that the taxpayer is paying for. And that's where that's coming from. So it's not like you're being singled out. It's just we were led to believe a different set of circumstances that we're now facing. Number one, there would be no taxpayer money going into this building. And that's where this comes from. So by having staff do this work on this building that they're being paid for, those are taxpayer funds, and the fact that there's $3,500 of taxpayer money going into the mortgage on this building every month is the other problem that we have. That would be my guess where that question's coming from.
Thank you, Councillor Cardy.
Thank you, Worship, and my comment is, if you go to your MPP, which we've been told many a times, they will set you up with the right department who will help you develop a scope of work or an RFP or an RFQ on how to pursue getting these items clarified for you so that when it does go out to bid process, you have your I's dotted and T's crossed. So those departments will help you develop those requests for quotation, especially the department that's involved in that type of work through historical means and things like that. So there are people out there that are willing to help. Those departments are paid to do that. So I would recommend that we do that.
Thank you. Any other? Councillor Chambers, please.
Mr. Mayor, I'm wondering if someone could clarify for me, Councillor Simons alluded to the advisory committee as a committee of council.
Oh.
I'm of the impression that the Bucket Center Advisory Committee was established through the gifting agreement as a standalone committee, in other words, not a committee of council. Now, I'm not sure of the fine line between the two, but if it is a committee of council, then I have no problem with staff doing their obligated duties as a employee of the council. But if indeed it's a standalone committee, then that is no different than a committee outside of the county jurisdiction using a county staff member to assist their work, which is, again, a draw on county staff. So if it can be determined or clarified that this indeed is a committee of council, as opposed to a standalone committee coming and resulting from the gifting agreement, then I think it may shed light on the issue that we're discussing. So can someone clarify that for me? Is this a standalone committee?
I agree that that's exactly the point that we need to deal with. And that's why I was suggesting it be referred to the committee itself for clarification. However, there is a gentleman sitting beside me that would might wish to comment on that issue, and maybe not prepared to tonight. That's why it needs some concern. The concern needs to be considered, probably.
Thank you, Worship. I don't have the answer to what Councillor Chambers was talking about there. I think there's a fine point there that I'd like our clerk and Michael to look into, and we can report back to you to clarify that. But I don't think there's anybody here that can do that tonight.
Councillor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So within the gifting agreement, it also states that we as a county own that property.
Correct.
So might I suggest that as we, the county, own that property, it does in fact fall under county council business? I'm not 100% sure on that, but I'm
That's an
looking.
excellent point, because do you want a standalone committee governing
Something
a
that we-
county property?
That- yeah.
Realizing that its whole future may lie before it as to what part it will play in county infrastructure. Yes. Did you want to add to, and then I'll go?
Just to clarify, and
Yes.
it's my understanding, and that's the point I'm alluding to,
Yes.
it's my understanding that the Bucket Advisory Committee was established as the managing committee,
Yes.
even though we own the property.
Correct.
They are managing it. And that was one of the issues that, if you recall at the time, that I wasn't supportive of, because if the county owns a building, they should not relinquish the management of the building, and I believe the gifting agreement did just that, and that's my understanding and opinion, and I could be wrong, and that's what we need clarified, because if indeed it is a managing committee that is managing a county asset, then
Yes.
they have that responsibility and obligation. The reason I believe it is that way is because it was said by a couple of the counselors, and we all recall that no county taxpayer dollars would be going toward this project. And that, again, has to be recognized and clarified, because indeed, as we're going down the route, county tax dollars are being provided to the project. County staff apparently is being provided to the managing advisory committee, and that relationship really has to be clarified early at the outset, because as the train goes down the tracks, there's going to be issues where perhaps the council may disagree on something, whatever it may be, with the managing committee, and we're not going to be sure who has the say over what. So we really have to clarify that, and it's a little bit complicated because of this gifting agreement. So I would encourage the CAO and staff to make those clarifications.
It's extremely important indeed, because it's county-owned property is why the committee is required and should indeed report to county council as it moves along. Councillor Gatward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The committee was appointed by this council. It wasn't appointed independently.
Thank you.
I do understand the discussion that's taking place, but if you read the terms of reference, to make other recommendations to the council of the County of Brant in regard to the Bucket Center. So I don't believe this committee is trying to be the end-all to beat-all. I think they want to work with the county as other advisory committees work with the county. Thank you.
Councillor Simons.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Mayor, if indeed this is not a committee of council, then why is this recommendation at the council table? I don't quite
I just
understand it.
stated that because it is managing a county property, it's required to, and that's in, I don't think there's any doubt that it must report to council. Of course it must and will, but the clarification that's been requested is extremely important to be considered and dealt with and come back to this council. How and what and whom. That needs all to be done. And I don't think indeed, we all need to be extremely clear on the matter for the future. Absolutely. Councillor Wheat.
I compare this similar to the Onondaga Hall, where we own it, but there's a group down there in Onondaga that are running it. And we'll get a report from them at budget time as to how many dollars they need or whatever they're doing. But there's a group running that hall.
Thank you for that information. So we have a motion dealing with the report only at this time.
Correct.
And then a request. Where does the request for clarification lie?
I don't have any formal motion or anything for
Okay,
the
we will
request.
deal with that after we deal with the report. Councillor Coleman, you're about to ask a question.
Then I'll separate number two.
Yes.
That's what needs to be done first.
Just don't agree with anything.
You wish number 2 separated. In that case, recommendation number 1, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Did I get the right number? Number 2.
Don't approve
There's a motion that it be approved. Moved and seconded, thank you, by the presenter. Councillor Bauma.
One more comment on that. If we do approve this, who will be paying for the concept?
The committee,
Very good.
even though it has no money at this point in time.
Yep.
I have to say that too, because I know you will mention that, and
Absolutely.
properly so. Fundraising has not commenced, unfortunately, even though there's an attempt to obtain funds that were acquired by other groups in the past for this very subject. Councillor Coleman.
I would move that we defer this
Me-
recommendation for the time being until we can report back to staff seeking the seconder, so we get this clarification. Because it looks like to me in this whole damn room, the silly season's already started for 2 years ahead, so.
Motion proposed by Councillor Coleman requesting a seconder. Is there a seconder in council? Councillor Councillor Chambers seconds that motion. That is before us. Councillor Pierce wishes to speak to that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I absolutely cannot support deferring this. We've just had a couple of councillors speak up that we're continuing to pay money into this. We've stated fundraising hasn't started. We understand that this project is behind. If we defer this even more, then that's going to defer the request for quotation even further. I would be in support of this recommendation to get that request completed.
Yes, sir.
We're going to have our staff looking into exactly how the makeup of this is, but it's been stated several times that this is behind. I agree with it. It is behind. We need to get our butts moving on this, so to speak. So I do not support a deferral. I'm in favor of the recommendation as stated in there.
And additional information is the letters have been, although they should have been prepared and forwarded some time ago, have been prepared and will be signed, I expect, by myself tonight to move forward. Councillor Bauma, please.
I'm completely comfortable with deferral, and I'll be voting for that, simply for the reason that we were told that once we solidified the committee membership and once the terms of reference were put in place, then fundraising could move forward. There was never said that we needed to have an RFQ for a plan in order to move forward. So I think let's defer that, get it done right, because these are questions that are going to be coming back to haunt us for years to come. And so we need good, hard, solid answers on these things now, so that when we're dealing with our building 10 years from now still, that we have a good way of managing it at that point too, and who will be managing it and how, before we move any further.
I agree with Councillor Pierce that the recommendation hopefully will be passed so that we can move forward. It's been too long delayed now, and as a member of the committee, that's self-criticism. It should have been dealt with much sooner. The committee hasn't been in gear to carry out its responsibilities, but I believe that it will be and is at this point in time. But it's important to move on rather than delay it. It's been delayed far too long in several aspects, which is unfortunately. Any other member of council wish to speak to the matter? So there is a motion to defer item 2. Is that before
Correct.
us now to be dealt with? So unless there's another speaker, the motion is before you to be dealt with, to defer approval, to defer the motion to approve recommendation number 2. Do you agree with that wording?
Yep.
Oh, we're on side, thank you. So, motion to defer, all in, Councillor Wheat.
I'm not going to vote to defer it.
Thank you.
I'm going to vote against it to begin with.
Move
Because
it.
deferring is just delaying for another month.
Yes.
If it passes, it passes. I'll be voting against, but if I'm voting against,
Yes.
Councillor Carney pointed out committees, that the committee can move forward with that request. So they have an option.
Thank you. The motion to defer, all in favor? Count.
3?
Opposed? Amendment is lost. The motion to approve is before council. All in favor? Pardon? Recorded vote. Noted. All in favor? Opposed? And the verdict is?
Motion's carried.
Thank you. That completes the report. However, there's been requests that an additional motion be passed, and that is the matter of clarification. Do you have that wording, Madam Clerk?
I believe the motion is that clarification be provided on whether the committee is established as a committee of council.
Or? Maybe it doesn't need to. Is that satisfactory, Councillor Chambers, or how should it be?
The only issue that arises from either being one or the other is the role that staff plays with regard to the project. And the recommendation that we just passed directed a member of the staff to carry out a task.
Correct.
If indeed it's a committee of council, you don't have to have that recommendation each and every time. Staff is just there at the obligation to carry out committee requests and staff requests as long as it's not a standalone committee.
Correct.
We wouldn't want a committee of whatever using our staff if it was not a committee of council. That's the clarification that I'm requesting, and I think it stems from the gifting agreement, and the clarification needs to be done early so that we can act accordingly through the process that this project is going to be carried out as.
That clarifies it, I believe, clarifies it. Any further comment by a member of council? You've heard the motion. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. We will now, that completes the list of reports, and we're now to number 9, staff reports, and the first is COU 16-18, pre-servicing agreements. And there is a recommendation on the agenda that council receive this report for information purposes, and I believe we had agreed to deal with the request of the delegation regarding this matter that was presented earlier to council is also before us. Is that correct? Councillor Balma, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Wheat, that council received this report as presented for informational purposes.
Questions, comments by members of council? Debate by members of council? Anyone? Councillor Chambers.
Just for clarification, if we receive the report for information, that's fine, then we still have to deal with the request for whatever.
Correct.
I'm just pointing that out because if we receive it for information, we're not actually adopting any position. So that needs to be clarified.
Did he give a second?
Yep.
Any other member of council wish to comment? Councillor Gatward.
Thank you. I read somewhere about a 10%,
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the last word, about a,
10%
the percentage.
holdback, or whatever you want to call it, towards these pre-servicing agreements. I also read in one of the reports about a 15% contingency. And all of a sudden, that's disappeared, the 15% contingency.
So your request is?
That if we are going to deal with the solicitor's request separately, that be considered, that 15% contingency. And of course, we're going to have to bring back a template of a pre-servicing agreement that we want to use. There's been several suggested.
Just a point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
The reason I said what I said was that we are dealing with the two subjects separately. The resolution
Agreed.
before us now
Yes.
is whether to receive the report as information. The councillor is talking about the second aspect,
Yes.
while the
Correct.
first aspect is before us on the table. So I
And
would
we'll
ask
have-
that she relinquish her desire to talk about the second part of it before we deal with the first part of it.
Councillor Gatward will have the opportunity to speak to that at the time it comes up, if she wishes.
Yes, and
Guaranteed.
thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Mayor.
thank you. So, receive for information, any member of council wish to speak to that? If so, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Second item, the request regarding the pre-servicing agreement. Councillor Gatward, did you have a comment to make, or were you finished, I believe?
Well, it says in the 10%,
Yes.
but the 15% contingency was removed.
I believe that would be an amendment if the pre-servicing agreement is recommended for approval at this time.
I think the statement was made earlier about 10%. Perhaps it was Councillor Blumer.
Well, Councillor Bauman can speak on his own.
He might have made,
He can speak on his own,
yes,
Councillor.
that 10% wouldn't cover works that need to be done. And that's why I'm raising this issue
Thank
of
you.
an additional 15%.
Is there a motion on the floor?
No, there is not, and it's up to members of council to decide if there is going to be a motion and what that motion is. Councillor Chambers had his hand up first, and the Councillor Coleman.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, to put it on the floor, I'll move the two clauses that were presented in the presentation to council, that council approve a policy and that a condition of approval be included, et cetera. So that'll be
Do you have
moved.
that wording? Yes. Councillor Coleman, seconds. Discussion by members of council. Are you all clear on the motion that's before you? Councillor Bauma, please.
So is this just allowing, if I may, through you, Mr. Chair, pre-servicing agreements to happen, or is that directing staff to bring a policy before us so that we can approve that? Right? And will that be coming directly back to council for approval next month? Or will it go through PAC first and then to council?
Councillor Chambers.
It's my understanding that the request as outlined, we are approving a policy
Yes.
to allow pre-servicing agreements, which would, it in essence is saying that staff, according to the report that was presented to us that we just received, is the background to the policy, and that indeed it does not have to come back, but it is indeed deemed to be approved. A policy, well, I guess we're leaving it up to staff to protect the interest of the county with regard to the policy that they will be presenting.
But we haven't approved the policy yet. We don't have that actual policy in hand, the wording of it written by our staff.
No, this.
Yeah, what the recommendation essentially is saying is that we are entrusting staff
Yes.
to develop the policy,
Okay.
unseen.
Right.
To be presented.
Any other questions? Councillor Cardy?
Sorry, Councillor Chambers. Would, unseen in the sense of we would not be able to vote on that policy that they've put together, or that they would have to bring it back to us for approval? That's what I'm trying to get my head around, if I may.
It's right.
Here's the exact wording of the recommendation. That council approve a policy to allow pre-servicing agreements to be entered into, subject to staff presenting an acceptable pre-servicing agreement and financial securities in a form and amount to the satisfaction of the county. So the policy will be in place, and prior to any agreement being entered into, we would have the opportunity to either reject the agreement or accept the agreement, is my understanding of the recommendation that is in both the presentation and in the report.
Thank you for the clarity.
Mr. Emerson?
Thank you, Worship. I wonder if you would allow Rob, the Director of Planning, to just comment on this. I think it's consistent with what Councillor Chambers just said, but it's my understanding that it was the intention in this writing of this report that this be moved on and not come back with another policy. The next thing you would see would be the pre-servicing agreement. Is that correct?
Before you answer, Councillor Wheat, are you agreed with this presentation? Please proceed. You always include the chairman.
Thank you, Mayor Eddy. Yeah, I had this specific conversation with the general manager when I read this report as well. There's a bit of confusion there. I specifically asked him that question. Was it his anticipation that staff would go away and prepare a policy, or was it his anticipation that this is approved and move forward? And that was his intention, was that it would be approved tonight, and on a go-forward basis, we would do this.
The agreement.
No, essentially, you could remove the words "approve a policy." That would do it. So the recommendation would read, that council allow pre-servicing agreements to be entered into. Right?
Councillor Pierce?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, my understanding of this is we're approving the concept of pre-servicing, not necessarily point blank for everybody. Each one will be brought back, but we're saying we're agreeing to the concept of the pre-servicing and then go on from there. That's my understanding anyway.
That's correct, Mayor Eddy, and if the 10% issue is an issue, you may want to add, and a minimum of 10% be taken, because each one may be dealt with individually and separately.
Oh, yes. Thank you for the information. Councillor Pierce?
Thank you. If I could, I would like to make that motion that we do take out approve a policy and just have it worded that council be allowed, the council to allow pre-servicing and add the minimum of 10%.
Well, the previous is amending a motion. Is that motion before us?
Yes, the motion's before us, and this is an amendment to that motion.
To that motion. Is there a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Simons. Discussion on the amendment. Councillor Chambers.
The only objection I would have to that is that it's my feeling that we need to document policies, and this, in my mind, puts something in place as a policy that we could find in a policy manual somewhere, rather than kind of an unwritten rule. It is a documented policy. So I like the wording, approve a policy, which puts the onus on staff to have something that can be concrete and be referred to, rather than just a kind of an unwritten practice. So I like the attempt at policy. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Did you wish to comment, clerk?
The clerk's office does keep a policy manual of all our policy decisions that we've made.
So I guess my question would be, is this going to be in the book if that resolution passes?
Yes, it'll be added if the resolution passes.
I'll take your word for it and trust you.
Is there someone wishes to comment on that comment? Councillor Powell?
This here.
Just to clarify, the 10% that's being brought up, is that a staff number?
It's
Or
all-
is that the developer's number?
It's been changed to a minimum of 10%.
But is that coming from?
Minimum, which leaves it open as to what the actual percentage would be, a minimum.
Okay.
Someone else over here wishes to comment? CAO?
I'm sorry, Rich, I saw a hand up on the other side.
Well,
I saw it.
Councillor Gatward, I wouldn't overlook her, you know. Councillor Gatward, or wouldn't be allowed to.
Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't see.
I just want to be clear that because it says that staff presenting an acceptable pre-servicing agreement and financial securities in the form of an amount of satisfaction of the county, including da-da-da-da-da, and that each pre-servicing agreement be presented to council for approval. So by accepting the staff report as information, we didn't necessarily accept the Milton agreement as the one we are going to use. I would expect that staff, in developing a policy for pre-servicing agreements, would look at them all and come up with the best one for the county.
Well, you can't designate any agreement as an acceptable agreement because you don't know whether it's acceptable by council until it's been considered by council.
That's
and
right.
it may be amended in one or more ways.
That's
which
right.
is council's right.
And-
So
and-
to say it's an acceptable agreement, you don't know.
Well, that's what I'm referring to,
You know the
Mr. Mayor.
intent
is-
of the word.
What I'm referring to, Mr. Mayor, is it has to be acceptable to council,
But you
which
don't
model
know.
we're going to use.
But you don't know whether it's acceptable until it's been
Till they
presented
bring it
and
forward.
considered by council.
That's right. That's what I
But it can
basically
follow the
said.
rules. Oh, we
Only you're
agree.
twisting it around.
Thank you very much. We agree. Please note. Councillor Simons, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in approving this, are we setting a precedent for other developments, or is this on a single basis? And it's an individual case as they come forward?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
Do you want to speak?
I could just clarify that. So what you're doing tonight, if you approve this, is approving a policy, that your policy is that we will allow these in general, but they have to come back to council specifically, each one, for your approval. And you may choose to approve one and reject another. That's your prerogative, based on this.
And you agree that that's proper procedure? That's what we
I
should-
think it's reasonable
That's what we
procedure.
should.
We do that with other things. They're judged on their own merit.
Exactly the point. Right. Is that quiet approval?
I have a motion to amend, but I have no seconder yet that I know of.
No seconder to amend?
To the motion to amend, yes.
And so the motion, had we better back up and you read the motion, the initial motion that's before us, and then the amendment, so we're all clear. Councillor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I made the amendment to,
Yes, sir.
and Councillor Simon seconded it.
Simon second. We do have that.
We do now, yep.
And the motion to amend reads,
The motion to amend, we'll change it to read that the council allow pre-servicing agreements to be entered into, subject to staff presenting an acceptable pre-servicing agreement, and the other changes, in the amount of a minimum of 10%. Those are the two changes in the amendment.
agreed, that's what we're dealing with?
Yes, but I have one more question if I may. So minimum of 10%, so does the county have the right to increase that amount? We have the right to increase that amount? Okay.
Oh, absolutely, if it's a minimum. It's not a closed amount. Correct. Okay, everyone clear? All in favor? Opposed? One opposed. Carried. Motion, initial motion as amended. You want to read that now?
Sure.
So that we're absolutely clear on every word.
That council allow pre-servicing agreements to be entered into, subject to staff presenting an acceptable pre-servicing agreement and financial securities in a form and amount to the satisfaction of the county, including indemnification clauses in the amount of a minimum of 10% of all pre-servicing related construction and site works, and that each pre-servicing agreement be presented to council for approval, and that a condition of approval be included in future draft plan approval conditions stating that pre-servicing could be considered and approved by council.
I have a question. Why are we using the word acceptable in an early clause and not saying it in the last clause? We're using it in one place and not the other, and you don't know how does staff know what's acceptable until it's dealt with by council? So the word acceptable needs to be replaced or eliminated. I have a problem with that, and I hope other members do. When you say an acceptable agreement, you can't pin that on any staff member to present something that's acceptable to someone else without the other person knowing and stating what's acceptable. It's only acceptable when it's dealt with. You would support that, I expect.
I would suggest we could do an amendment just to remove the word and it would read fine.
I think that would clear the matter up completely if that were done, because we have to use the word in its full meaning. Is that agreed, that we can delete it? Well, it could be if we're friends tonight. You agree? Are we agreed to that? Some are not convinced, but thank you. Thank you. Okay. Now we have the motion before us. Any member wish to speak to the motion now before you as amended? Well, yeah, you can have more than two amendments, actually. Anyway, as amended and as amended. I'll use that wording. Is that?
Sure.
Oh, yes, Councillor, you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I guess I would be acceptable to removing acceptable.
Thank you.
Because in the next line, it does say to the satisfaction of the county.
Exactly.
So I think that's acceptable.
That is much better wording. Thank you. Thank you for raising.
It's called a redundancy.
That is exactly right. Thank you. After which will vote. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And now we'll rush on to other very important items. B, Capron Street Water Main Replacement, additional work. This came to light, I believe, early this morning, and it was decided the best way to do was get the information out. The information was relayed to members of council by email stating the facts, and I got the first 2 pages and I said, well, the changes, yeah, fine, what are they? And then a very concise, clear report on the reasons for the changes, what the staff had run into, why we're facing this imminent decision to proceed with the project and complete it. I hope I'm not taking any thunder, Councillor Coleman. Please proceed. Councillor, you present it first.
Mr. Mayor, moving on to south side by Councillor Gower, Capron Street water main replacement, additional work, and take it as presented and read.
Councillor Simons?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if I may, can you give me clarification as to where it's going to end?
Yes, I think that was set out.
Was it set out? I don't remember.
Yes. It's there.
Yes, the general manager has a map for this.
Oh, good.
Take note, this is still within budget. No, I'm just making sure.
Did you do this in your spare
I
time?
just want to know where it's going because I'm not.
Well, it's stated in the report, I believe, the number of feet. I didn't paste it off myself, I didn't have time.
Mr. Chair, if I can find a pointery thing here.
Yes.
Give me 1 second. Yeah, it's not working. Hang on. So the red line,
Yes.
here we go. The red line is what is existing now. That's the project that was originally approved. It goes down to the intersection at St. Andrews Street here.
St. Andrews.
And then the, heavens. The blue line is the additional work, and it would extend, I think there's about 6 or 7 properties. This property here is actually connected to the, down to where the intersection is there. So it would just be that additional blue line there that would be installing. And that will join us up to the steel main, which based on our last test pit, is right there, so.
I feel that this was well handled to meet the requirement that needs to be done. Councillor Pierce, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Couple quick points. Yeah, the information we were given today, it documents everything, which is fantastic. And as we know, I'm a numbers guy, so if you go through the numbers, if you look at item 12.
Yes, sir.
It talks about stamped concrete to match the existing. I'm trying to understand, there's extra work being done here, and it's twice the amount of stamped concrete in this extra than there was in the original. And I'm trying to understand that. And just as a second note, I think it was $650,000 was the budget for this, I believe. So we're technically $652 over budget, but that's okay. It's not under budget, just wanted to clarify that. I understand that, but you said it was within budget, Mr. Coleman, and it is not. At any rate, I'm just curious as to...
Well, it depends at what time you increase the budget.
Yeah, I'm just curious as to why there's, if we look at the length of the additional work that's being done there, and I'm supporting this because it has to be done, I get that, but I'm just trying to understand why is it double the amount in that section than there was in the whole entire other section?
Good question.
Your worship, so the question is about just about the stamped concrete? I believe, and I'm speaking with little education on this exact project, but I think it would be, we try to match our project with what's existing on the residence driveway. So if we tear up the end of the residence driveway, we try to replace it so if they've got asphalt, we replace it to asphalt along the curb edge there. I think that would be what we'd be talking about. So it could be the only instance. I think that's what the answer to the question is.
Because if you didn't, you might have a delegation to council.
Likely.
No, Mr. Mayor, if I could, and I totally understand that we need to put it back as it was, I get that, but it talks about square meters here, units.
Yes, good
And it's
point.
talking about measurements, so there's 20 square meters in the additional work, and there was only 10 square meters in the original work.
Yes.
So I understand we have to put it back as normal, and even if you look, at first I thought, well, maybe it's the number of driveways and that sort of thing, but then when I looked at the original one, there's like 3 times the amount of driveways. I mean, I'm just curious, it's only $2,100, it's not a huge thing, but I'm just, it's the only thing that stood out on me, that's all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Weed, as I said, I am in support of this, and actually I care if something comes across me where the numbers don't add up, for the record. Thank you.
Your worship, just to close that, I'll find that out and I'll include it in the
Thank
Friday
you.
file.
Thank
with-
you. It
with-
would
with
be good
council's
to
pleasure.
know whether there's a motive. I won't use the word P. Okay. It's usually extra cost. Sometimes. Any other requests regarding the matter? If not, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. My goodness, we're over another page. 210, information reports, nothing listed. 11, communication, the Brant Peddlers and Paddlers, seniors organization. Requests for a grant of $3,000 to offset startup costs, but they've already started. Councillor Cardy.
I requested it go to budget deliberations for 2017. Motion.
You're moving it be referred to budget. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Bauma. Discussion by members of council.
I think they're looking for it now.
That may be, however, the motion doesn't deal with an urgency if that's the case. Anyone else? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Questions and answer. Any member of council have a question that, Councillor Chambers.
Just a question perhaps through you to the operations manager and perhaps the road chairman. The last couple of days, I've had a few phone calls of some what I'll call upset, confused residents in and around the village of Falkland. It stems from the Class EA with regard to the interchange at Bishopsgate Road. It's my understanding that a public meeting has been held with regard to that Class EA interchange study at the Bishopsgate Road. Now, apparently, out of that public meeting and discussions, a suggestion was made that an interchange be looked at on Maple Avenue, the road to the west. And as a result of that, this past weekend or week's end, several letters were delivered to residents in the area of Falkland and the second concession with a proposal, an option that showed a diagram of a road going from Pucktown Road through the second concession, through farmland, eventually making its way to Maple Avenue and connecting with the 403 vicinity on Maple Avenue. Now, I understand, and you understand, and everybody here understands that that's an option that is going to be considered. But when the residents received the handout or the letter, they don't know what a Class EA is.
No.
They don't know what's going on. They just looked at the fact that all of a sudden the county is planning to build a road through their farm, through their lot, etc. And it upset them because they didn't understand what was going on. So they called me. And I tried to explain to them the process. And I think they understand the process, but what they didn't understand was the communications process by which they were informed of what perhaps may go on. So my question is there any way that better communications can be provided to residents who do not understand the Class EA process, et cetera, so that they are not upset with a perceived action by the county that they're going to have to sell their farms to the county so they can build a road to Maple Avenue? It caused considerable angst to several people, and it was, in my opinion, was unfair to them. Somehow we have to be a little bit more sensitive to the ratepayers than just giving them essentially a handbill or a letter with a scheme that they know nothing about and would be adamantly opposed to that. The letter was noticed for a meeting that's coming up in September, and I encourage them and their neighbors to go to voice their opinions, but to be quite frank, they were upset. And my question is there anything that we can do now to perhaps calm the waters in the area?
Councillor Chambers, thank you for bringing this matter up. I was involved with a similar experience whereby a number of people who had fairly new, at least in my opinion, modern houses, I believe 5 or 6, along the west side of Bishopsgate Road that were approached by the consultants saying they were looking at perhaps, and I don't know where that the word perhaps was used, expropriating their houses for the county. And they were disturbed. And I think it depends so much on the consultant's approach to people. Because as you say, people do not understand what an EA is. They're told that the county is looking at this, and they really feel the impact of the approach. And I don't know that a county employee accompanies that. I don't think they do. But the consultants it's a job they have to do to look at all possible aspects. And some of them are, in my opinion, somewhat beyond reason, really. But it hits the people with this approach. The county is looking, and of course we are looking at the possibility, but it's far beyond what I ever expected. So your question, it goes to, I expect the CAO to look at this. Consultants work for us, but some of them take the matter, I have a feeling, beyond what it should be, the way it should be done. I don't know, would you care to comment on that? Or Mr. Bradley, I don't know which one of you.
Did you want to comment, Michael? While Michael's coming up, I'll say, and hopefully the same thing as Michael, that
I think he would.
I think I'm hearing from both of you and nods from other members of council that we should look into this, probably report back to you as to what the existing process is and what can be done to improve the communication, especially in situations that have the potential to be sensitive to.
Well, this one has been a particularly contentious matter for a number of decades, anyway, and now it's worse.
Mr. Chair, Your Worship, and as the CAO said, I think the Public Works Committee saw this information at their July meeting. This is the fourth, I think, EA our public meeting we've had. And I think what I've noticed, and I'm fairly new to this, but people come into the public information sessions and they read about the first 3 lines of the notice, they look at the photo, and then they just assume that it's a done deal. And if they read the whole document, it says, we're considering these options, we're laying them out for you, so
Yeah,
you can
and they
see
are
where you
options.
fall in terms of these options. And we encourage you to come to the meeting, where then we've got big boards, walls and walls of big boards, we can walk people through them. And what I notice, especially with these more contentious ones, the folks come in, they're mad at the public meeting. We walk them through the boards, they become calmer, they become, certainly a lot more educated. And maybe the thing is maybe not, is to just say right off the bat, you should come to this public meeting, and then put all the stuff, but we're
Because
also
it's gonna
beholden to some
happen.
language in the Environmental Assessment Act that says you must lay this stuff out in this fashion. And we've even talked about this at the staff level. That language is not helping us one bit. So I think maybe we could look at better cover pages for our public notices, but really to get people to call in. I think I've got folks that are happy to talk these people through it, and that usually helps helps them out with the situation. But to come to the public meeting, because we've got all the big graphical representations of the project, and usually at that point, then they get what's going on, they can outline their opinion on it, and then that influences the decision that we eventually make. So that's my thoughts on the matter, but we will certainly take into consideration. I've heard it myself as well around the Bishopsgate situation, and I think it's that cover page that we could do some work on. We still have to put that EA language into that notice. So.
We'll come back.
Did you wish to comment?
No,
further?
we'll come back to you, Your Worship.
Councillor Powell, please.
A question on a different topic. Last night, CBC did a very informative study of the Brampton Civic Hospital regarding waiting times. 90% of people wait 3.5+ hours, and the waiting room is always very crowded. A doctor set up a private urgent care facility a few doors down from the hospital. His waiting time is 10 minutes, and he handles everything except very critical cases like cardiac. And I wonder if that would be an answer at BGH.
Your Worship, I'm not sure, I think the question was, you wonder if that would be an option for BGH. I guess that was the question. I just want to point out also, though, and I think most of you saw this in the paper, there was some additional provincial money allocated, and I think it said for 2 additional emergency room nurses. That's just something nurses. It's just something that's recently happened. But if that question, obviously, we don't have the skill set here to answer that, it would need to be forwarded on to the appropriate bodies.
Thank you. Councillor Simons?
I just wanted to bring that forward to also when I read that they, under 16,000, they have approved the grant for 2 offload nurses. And they figured that is going to move the process much faster to get the ambulances out of the waiting room.
That does not answer the problem of shortage of beds
Thank you.
that are available.
Thank you, exactly. Another Band-Aid.
Councillor Gatwood, please.
In answer to, excuse me, Councillor Powell's suggestion, there was a walk-in clinic across the road from the hospital, and it closed. But I used to visit it because my doctor was part of it, and it was really busy. It was backed up. He did not wait 10 minutes, so just a
I don't
thought.
know whether a walk-in clinic is the same as an urgent care clinic.
I'm not sure.
Anyone else on that matter? If not, we note it. Any other questions by members of council? Councillor Weed.
Community services have a report from our consultant regarding ambulance. And I thought I'll direct this to the will, but I thought we need a motion that day or decision that that consultant would present to all of council.
Yes.
Not just us, but also the city.
Correct.
And I'm just wondering if anything has happened.
Yes.
To set that presentation up.
Yes, my understanding it is. I saw an
Yes.
email.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Worship. And yes, we've been meeting with the city. There was actually contemplated the idea of maybe having a joint educational type thing if the consultant, but then it thought the logistics around that were going to be difficult. So a few of us are meeting with the consultant, we think, on Monday, if he's been on vacation when he gets back, along with the city representatives, Jeff Ray and his staff, and to set a time. And I believe that city council wants to deal with it sometime in the early part of September, and obviously, we would try and get it here at the same time. So whether it would have to be a special council meeting or a session before CDC or something like that, we'll have to work with the mayor and come up with something that's suitable.
And this will go to other members of council who are not on community services. Because since that report, I've received an email from the union rep of the ambulance staff objecting. I'm just wondering if other members like Pierce, Powell, Coleman received that email also. Yes, and in regards to that, I was approached at the AMO conference by the OPSU workers and their union, and they said to me, what are you going to do? And I said, we haven't made any decisions. We're still dealing with it with the city as well, but I said, I'm sure once a decision's made, you'll hear about it. But they tried to pinpoint, you know, what is the resolution? And I said, there is no resolution at this time, and just left it at that. So they're it seems to be going around the whole OPSU circle for the EMS.
Councilor Coleman, sorry, thank you, Mayor, and for the CEO's information, the Trees Committee has already got a meeting booked ahead of the CDC meeting, so I know it's not a big committee, but we got 3 hearings that night. You need to pick another night for that.
Sure, we'll work with you and the clerk and come up with, canvas council and come up with the appropriate thing.
Any other questions by members of council? If not, we would move on to resolutions. Councilor Chambers, low impact development is the recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'll put the resolution on the floor and then speak briefly to it. The resolution is moved by myself and seconded by Councilor Cardy, and it's there before you. Mr. Mayor, I spoke at length, probably too long, at the previous meeting about this, so I'm going to be very brief, just to say a few things. First of all, what's important to recognize about the resolution is that it is purely policy. It's the role of council to propose policy and the role of the staff to implement the policy. So this is coming in this form rather than a staff report, in that I feel that it's a policy that we need to put in place. It's not so much putting the policy in place, because in many ways it's in place already. It's just elevating the profile of the policy, as you can see by the wording of the resolution. I focused on stormwater management as an example of low-impact development in the previous council meeting when I introduced this as a notice of motion. So I'm going to speak briefly, continuing along with stormwater management as kind of a focus of low-impact development philosophy, but low-impact development is not by any means restricted to stormwater management. I have, and I'm going to be referring to a document that is actually a Ministry of the Environment and Climate Change document entitled Expectations Regarding Stormwater Management, that was presented in February 2015, and I'm sure staff have seen this, or at least they should have seen it. It's the ministry's expectations regarding stormwater management. Let me just give you a couple quotes. And first of all, before I do that, I just want to reiterate that the philosophy of low-impact development is essentially the healthier the environment that one lives in, the healthier everyone will be. And I don't think anybody can argue that philosophy. The healthier the environment that one lives in, the healthier everyone will be. The ministry says this to us: the environmental health of many watersheds continues to decline as urbanization increases. So as urbanization is going on, the environment is degraded. And that's the issue that low-impact development is attempting to address. The ministry's expectations regarding stormwater management emphasize an approach to stormwater management that mimics a site's natural hydrology as a landscape is developed. The main tenet of this approach is to control precipitation as close to possible where it falls. This is low-impact development. The natural hydrological cycle should be maintained to the greatest extent possible. The ministry's existing acts, regulations, policies, and guidelines emphasize the need for this approach to stormwater management, this approach being low-impact development. And the document goes on, it's several pages long, outlining why the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change wants municipalities, developers, and stakeholders to embrace low-impact development practices. It concludes that low-impact development can be less costly than conventional stormwater management practices. A 2007 United States EPA report summarizes 17 case studies of developments that include LID practices, and concludes that applying LID techniques reduce project costs and improve environmental performance. So there's incontrovertible evidence that LID is good, it works, and it's not expensive any more than any other proposals. That's stormwater management. And as I said, that's just one facet of low-impact development. It can be applied right across the board, anything from lighting, street lighting, heat zones, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not going to go on, but just to say that the resolution is policy, and it's a policy that we need to embrace, and that's the impetus of my resolution. And I'll conclude there.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, yes, I absolutely agree and support with Councillor Chambers here. I think it's a fantastic idea. And if I may say, if it is acceptable, we start doing this in our pre-servicing agreements to adapt this low-impact development.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Do we know at present how many communities within, I'm going to narrow it down, Ontario, are practicing this LIT now, or are we just, is this all brand new and everyone's on the same level at this moment?
If the question was directed to me, probably all municipalities are doing it in one way or another, but many of them are not doing it to the extent that the ministry would like them to, and that has an impact on the environment that we live in. So they all do it to some extent. It's just that it's kind of a new idea. The planners and the engineers and the developers are all used to dig a hole, run the water in it, make their money on developments, and move on to the next one. This is a philosophy that basically puts the developers, engineers, et cetera, feet to the fire to look after our environment when they develop their developments. In other words, the development has to conform to the environment rather than the environment conforming to the development.
So if I may, Mr. Mayor, ask again, do you see in the foreseeable future the Ministry of Environment endorsing this as a policy to be put into the policies for planning? Do you see that happening, like in the, say, the next 5 years?
That's what this is. It happened last year.
So it's totally there for everything then?
Yes, they recognize that the climate is changing. We are still relying on development standards that talk about 100-year storms, Hurricane Hazel. Climate is changing. Hurricane Hazel happened when I was a little kid, a little baby, as a matter of fact. What they're saying is you should be planning your developments on what may be coming rather than what happened 50 years ago, because things are changing. If we continue to rely on past practices, we are not recognizing what's happening today and what will happen in the future. That is, again, the philosophy of low-impact development. There are dozens and dozens of things you can do, from green infrastructure to stormwater management to street lighting to anything you can think of. We should be designing with our environment front and foremost in our mind. If I ask a developer, what does your development do to reduce the heat of your urban footprint, they would look at me like, yeah, you said it, are you, what? That should be just a natural question to ask. We should be asking those questions. That's why I'm saying to embrace the philosophy and use that philosophy in our development processes.
I agree totally, and as long as the developers are able to do what they've been doing for the last 50 years, it's going to continue. It's up to us to put that in writing, to make sure that it's embedded into the developers' contracts when they come to our table, and we enforce it.
But more than that, we have to, if this resolution passes, and you can see there's direction to staff, if we're directing staff to adopt the philosophy, and a developer comes to us and is whiny about what our staff is putting them through, we have to stand by our staff, because it's our policy to promote the philosophy of low-impact development. That's what the resolution is essentially saying. So don't pass it if you're not going to back it up. You have to walk the walk if you're going to talk the talk. And don't take a strip off a planner if he is promoting this to a developer, even though a lot of our developers and engineers were trained years ago, and they're reluctant to change. They should, and with this policy, and if everybody embraces it, will.
Who was next? Councillor Carty? And then
Thank you, Your Worship, and Robert.
Some others.
Robert, since you brought this up last, there was a good article on the television the other night in regards to Nestle's and taking 3.2 million liters of water a day from the aquifer, and because of the drought that we have run into, they say they haven't dented the water table, and yet independent studies are saying they've drastically dented the water table. Right now, they have no permit, but because they have no permit, they're still allowed to take the water until a new permit is issued by the province and the government. And the issue is right now, do they allow them to take 3.2 or 5? So that's the issue, because Nestle's lobbying to get 5 million liters a day. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely insane.
Yes, dangerous as well. Councillor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Councillor Simon asked if there was other municipalities doing the low-impact development. We had a developer in here not that long ago that was talking about a development potentially up on Cedar Street, and he talked about his stormwater reservoir that he's building there and suggested that it would actually be a low-impact development in the sense that it would be going back in the ground. So there's an example right there that it's happening potentially in our own backyard.
Councillor Baumann?
I like it a lot. I'm tempted to pause and maybe ask for a staff report so that we have a better idea of the full implications of the policy that we're putting in place. It sounds good, it sounds smart, and yet, you know, I'm racking my brain, what about when the instance comes up that we don't like? You know, I've driven through Toronto, I watched the temperature rise 5 degrees on the little thermometer in my car as you drive through and get back out. I like the idea of changing those things. I like the idea of the water going back into the soil where it falls and you know, that would obviate the need for having this drain going into the river from the whole Gurney property and Edgar property and all that stuff. And yet, I don't know enough about it to consider the full implications of what we're doing. You know, I like that it's sustainable, I like that it saves money, and because it's a policy, I guess we can look for exceptions on that too. So I'm okay if it passes tonight. I would like, part of me would like a report from staff on what their thoughts are on that.
Could I respond to that, Mr. Mayor? And that's part of the resolution. That's why I'm suggesting that the CAO report regularly, staff report on how this is going. And that's my way of getting this staff feedback. And obviously we can adjust accordingly. And that's part of the resolution.
But of course, this is adopted already then at that point.
Councillor Powell?
At the AMO conference in Windsor, the person who was head of the LID in Mississauga, I think they've been doing it for 7, 8 years. Dr. Victoria gave the whole background as how they implemented, some of the difficulties, how it's being worked, future challenges, how they tax the people, and she did an extremely good job. Now, whether she would maybe someday agree to come to the county and make that presentation would be excellent.
Thank you. Well, it's extremely important what we're discussing. And because of an abundance of water in the past, we've become very, very wasteful. We waste water. And it's got to change. It should change. So this is excellent discussion we are having tonight on how we can start to change. Councillor Chambers.
I'd just like to say one more thing, Mr. Mayor, and that's, I can't help but think of the delegation earlier this evening with regard to the berm and the presentation he made. If you notice, and people have to be educated on low-impact development, our residents as well, the solution was to take the water to the sewer.
Yes. Yes, sir.
I can't help but think that the water coming off his property may, and the idea of stormwater being somehow channeled with berms to a storm sewer,
yes,
with low-impact development philosophy and thinking and engineering, that whole problem may have been, or could have been resolved with rain galleries and infiltration areas, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's the benefit of low-impact development. If it's done correctly, you can avoid problems like that. And what the province is saying is that these, directing it to a pipe in concrete is maybe not the most effective, efficient, and environmentally sensitive way to do things. So again, it's a philosophy. It's open to the sky's the limit. And that's why I said at the last meeting that we can be on the vanguard of low-impact development because we have all the tools. We have local developers that have a stake in their community. We have a couple engineers that are a little bit, need to be modernized a little bit, but the challenge is there. We're not a big city where developers come in and move in, move out, rape the environment and make their dollars and go to the next place. We're in a community that, by and large, the developers, if given the chance and the direction and have the support, can make their developments environmentally superior, which makes the health of our communities superior, and that's the end goal. So I hope everyone supports the recommendation and we move into a new philosophy, or elevate an existing philosophy, because I know we do, and I commend our staff for doing some things that they do now.
We're going to hear much more about low-impact development, and appreciate the fact that it's before
us, and we're dealing with it in conversation, at least, here and now. Thank you. With that, did we pass the motion? I got carried away.
Motion's on the table.
On the table. Any further comment? I believe everyone that wished to has commented. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Great move forward. Other business, nothing listed. Any member of council have an item of other business that needs to be dealt with? Councillor Gatward.
Actually, it may have already been dealt with.
Yes.
Did our staff already meet with the environmental tribunal people regarding the water matter? And they were going to meet with Justin?
Just to recap where we're at here, there was the County of Brant and the Cobb Group both appealed.
Right.
And were, after some discussion and some consideration and so on and so forth, were granted leave to appeal on the water taking permit issue. That date, Michael, has been set yet, has it? 22nd of September. So.
And I thought I read in the newspaper, and I thought I recalled from our discussion that there was going to be a meeting about this issue. So the meeting hasn't taken place yet. That's all I wondered. Thank you.
Fine. Any other member? If not, the next item, of course, is 15, and there are a number of in-camera items listed on the agenda to be dealt with by counts tonight, followed by...
Myself and seconded by Councillor Pierce.
Thank you.
That the County Brant Council convene in camera to discuss the following matters: CO 1616, CO 1619, CO 1620, and verbal update.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Say again, please, councilors, register with Salute to Brant. You have to register through the website or go to the library's office
Yes.
and register. Please.
If you wish to go especially.
We'd like to have everyone there. If you want to go, you have to register, so please do that.
Members of council have to register?
Yes.
I don't. No.
I had to. I was not on the list.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Moved
You
by
have the
myself.
floor, sir.
Seconded by Councillor Chambers that the following bylaws being now read a first time, being in number 112-16 through 124-16.
First reading of bylaws, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Proceed, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Chambers, that the following bylaws be now read a second time and all clauses and preambles be adopted, being bylaw number 112-16 through 124-16.
Second reading of bylaws, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Does any member of council wish to comment on any of the bylaws or question the content, et cetera, although we've all read them? None? Please proceed.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Chambers, that the following bylaws be now read a third time, passed, signed, and sealed, noting numbers 112-16 through 124-16.
Third and final reading of bylaws. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next meeting, good heavens, the snow will be flying.
What about our climate change?
Good evening. Council is adjourned.